We talk a lot about how our mindsets impact our capacity to grow. But how do our mindsets impact the development of the people around us? In searching for this answer, I discovered some research that I think deserves way more attention.
My name is Bob Rosenthal, and I'm a just retired professor of many, many years, 20 years here, 37 years at Harvard before that, 5 years at North Dakota before that.
That's Dr. Roberth Rosenthal. He's one of the 100 most cited psychology researchers of all time. He spent most of his career looking at a topic called the Pygmalion Effect. He's done so much work in this field that some people actually call it the Rosenthal Effect. So I'm sitting in his office, and the first question I ask is the exact one on your mind right now. What's the Pygmalion Effect? And he goes, we have to start by talking about a study we did with rats. So he's in charge of this lab that does some research on rats, and one night he sneaks in.
We went into the lab, we hung little signs on cages based on a table of random numbers.
Half of the rats' cages were labeled the smart rats, the other half of the cages were labeled the dumb rats. A group of students comes in and they take care of the rats throughout the week. They feed them and care for them. At the end of the week, they run the rats through the maze, and what they discovered was weird.
And we found, if you're an experimenter, a human experimenter running rats, and you think your rats are smart, they're going to learn mazes faster than if you thought your rats were dumb.
What in the world is happening here? One thing I forgot to tell you is these rats in this study, they couldn't read. So this wasn't about like their mindsets and attitudes like, oh, I'm a smart rat and that gives me the confidence to run through the maze better. Of course not. But someone in the study could read, and that was the students. What they discovered, the essence of the Pygmalion Effect, is it's saying our labels and expectations can become self-fulfilling prophecies. It's exactly what happened. The smart rats actually became smarter. They did run through the maze better, but it wasn't magic. They ran through the maze better because the students treated them differently, and they treated them differently because of the label on their cage. So he writes up this first study and they publish it in a national journal. And the last sentence he poses a question. If this happens to rats, I wonder what happens to students.
So a couple of weeks after this science journal was published, I get this letter from Lenore Jacobson, who's a school principal in South San Francisco, and she says, if you ever graduate to real kids in real schools, have I got a school for you?
So he has all the teachers and says, I've created a better IQ test. My test is better because I can identify academic bloomers. Maybe not the students with the best grades now, but the ones that will make the most progress this year. So they give all the students this exam, they process the results, and they give the school a list of names. Here are your bloomers, the special ones. Rosenthal returns to the school 1 year later and gives the same students the same exam. And what they found is the bloomers do way better than the other students. In some of the classes, they more than doubled the progress of the students not on the list. So the teachers are amazed. They're like, wow, how do you identify a bloomer? Like, what's the secret to this test? And he goes, I just gave you 20 random names. Now think about that. Just like in the rat study, the students weren't aware of the label, but the teachers were. And when they analyze the data, what they find is, yeah, this label, this expectation becomes true because once again, it changes the way that the teachers treat the students. They would actually treat the bloomers a little bit better. They would create a warmer climate and teach them more challenging material.
That was an important mediating mechanism, is you teach more stuff to those for whom you have higher expectations.
So the label or expectation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because we make it become true. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is this isn't just 2 studies that show the power of the Pygmalion Effect.
All kinds of other studies were done on all kinds of experimental tasks. And as I say, there's over 500 of those studies, and I've meta-analyzed them.
The Pygmalion Effect has been studied in prison classrooms, military training programs, and even the corporate world. We found some great work by Christine Rubie-Davies from the University of Auckland.
My major interest is in teacher expectations and the ways that they influence student outcomes, the way that teacher expectations influence opportunity to learn.
In one of her earlier studies, she had a bunch of teachers fill out questionnaires on each one of their students, asking at what level do you expect this student to achieve by the end of the year? They were able to take those answers and compare them against where the students currently achieved. This allowed them to analyze sort of the gap between the starting point for the student and where the teacher expected them to end up. With that, they were able to identify two subsets of teachers from the pool. High expectation teachers, where there's a big gap between the starting point and where they expected their class to end up, and low expectation teachers, where there's a small gap between the starting point and where they expected their class to end up. And after a year, they process all the data, and guess what they see?
The kids who were with high expectation teachers made average gains of 2 years academic progress in 1 year, whereas the kids with low expectation teachers on average made slight negative relative gains over the year. So there was a huge contrast in terms of academic outcomes.
Quick question. What if the teachers were just right? What if they had higher expectations for better students?
No, that's not true, because that was one of the things that I found really interesting. There were a couple of experiments done in the States in the 90s where they actually took kids from the bottom group and put them in the top group. And by the end of the year, they were achieving at the same levels. So yeah, no, it definitely wasn't about the kids. Kids can make huge gains in a year, in just 1 year, when teachers believe in them.
The Pygmalion Effect is probably even more powerful in the real world than the lab. And there's two big reasons for this. First, when they do research like this, they never give a negative label. It's only positive. It's like bloomer or nothing. Now in the rat study they did because they weren't working with humans. It was smart and dumb. But when they work with humans, it's never a negative label, just positive. But if you think about it, in the real world, we have both positive and negative labels. You are smart, you are dumb, you are a math person, you are not a math person, you are a leader, you're not a leader. So usually we have the negative label, which I think will create even more of a gap. And the other thing is, in this research, they never tell the subject the label. But we do this all the time in the real world. I might believe that you're not a leader, and I'm probably going to tell you that. I might believe that you're not a math person, and I'm going to tell you that. And once we share this negative label or expectation with the subject, it becomes a double-edged sword.
You know, and then they're labelled, well, you're in the low group, you're no good. So kids, I mean, you start at 5, you go through school, by the time you reach 11 or 12, have you got any confidence left? Of course you haven't. Have you got any self-belief left? Of course you haven't. Because why would you want to stay at school with that continual message that you're not good enough?
This is the fixed mindset that we've talked about in a lot of our other videos. If I don't believe I'm a math person, I'm probably not going to practice very much. If I don't believe I'm creative, I'm not going to put myself into those situations. So now the subject, if they believe the limiting expectation, they're going to limit their experiences in practice. And I, as the leader, are going to limit them as well. And we're going to see even more of a gap between the positive labels and the negative labels. So what do we do? And this is the question that I was itching to ask Rosenthal. How do we take all of these studies and put them into practice? How do we apply it? Now in my head, I thought it was an easy application. I'm like, oh, the label, the expectation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we should just have really high expectations and then they'll become true. Like if I'm a math teacher, it's, okay, everyone can get 100% in my class. Or in the workplace, it's like everyone's capable of a 5 out of 5 on the performance review. And I said this out loud in the interview and Rosenthal kind of laughs. He goes, I don't think that's the best application for this research. Because it's not always the case. You could provide equal reps and support and challenges to everyone in a group, but very rarely are we going to see equal outcomes across the board. Like some students are going to be better at math than other students. Some people in the workplace are going to excel in different areas than others. His advice here actually changed the name of my company. He goes, we shouldn't attach an outcome to the label. The label we should use is learner. It's the best word ever. You might be better at math than me, but we can both get better at math. You might be more creative than me, but we're both learners. We can both get more creative if we practice. That word holds us accountable. If I truly believe that the people around me are learners, no longer can I put them in boxes and give them these stories and limiting beliefs. No longer can I tell you you're not a math person, not a leader. Now, treating someone as a learner doesn't mean I'm fake either. It's not like, you're a learner, therefore you're the best at math, when maybe that's not the case. Treating someone as a learner is saying, look, you know and I know, math might not be your best subject, but math is a skill and skills are built. It's going to take some practice and some struggle and experimentation, but if you do the work, you can get better at math, and I'm here to help you do that. That is 1,000 times more effective than telling someone the story about what they can't learn, can't do. And the best thing about the word learner is it's not some fluffy or fake optimistic approach that we're peddling here. The word learner is grounded in science.
I was for many years a professor at the University of California at San Francisco, and we did experiments. Other scientists had also done experiments earlier and in parallel that showed that the brain, in fact, was massively plastic at an older age, at any age, on any ability, and I could improve it. It turns out that plasticity in the brain is its big trick. It's the main thing that makes it so fabulous. Absolutely, everyone has the capacity to be better at virtually everything. With that understanding, miracles can occur in your capacity to understand or do complicated things that you never thought you'd be able to do. You are designed to be continuously improvable. Nobody's done. Nobody's defined what their limits are. I can tell you whatever you think your limits are, you're wrong.
Right.
You can be better next week, a little bit, but in a year you can be a lot better at almost anything that matters to you.
That's a neuroscientist that's been studying brains since the 70s. And for someone from that world to be that definitive, it carries so much weight. Absolutely everyone can get better at virtually anything. From the individual standpoint, we really want our people to believe that about themselves, that they have the capacity to grow. That's the essence of a growth mindset. From the leadership standpoint, it actually funnels back to the same word. We want to celebrate the differences in our people. Of course, they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's great. And at the same time, every person we work with is a learner, and we need to treat them accordingly.
What are the assumptions that I make about kids in my own class? And what does that mean in terms of the kinds of learning opportunities that I give to kids? Because for me, that's the core of teacher expectations, is the learning opportunities.
A couple months ago, I delivered this topic to a Major League Baseball team and a Division I college football team. And they seemed to really respond to the idea, but there was one area where they were having some trouble. They were like, well, in the sports world, we have all sorts of labels that we use, and they're usually about the player's skill set, their strengths and weaknesses. It's like, oh, my left fielder has great range but can't hit a curve. Are we supposed to abandon all of these labels? Of course not. My best advice is attach the label learner on top of it. I have great range and struggle hitting a curve. I can get better range and get better at hitting a curve because I'm a learner. Now, the other thing we have to be clear on, I'm not saying everyone on the accounting team is going to become professional keynote speakers overnight, or that our outside hitter is going to become our setter in one season. It takes a lot of time to develop skills. But what we are saying is there's hundreds of skills that can make each one of us better at what we do. Everyone on the accounting team can become better at communication, storytelling, connection. Of course they can. Our outside hitter can definitely get better at setting if they're allowed to practice.
Of course, there are individual differences in what kids can learn. Some of them are smarter than others. But still, any particular person, I don't care if they're really high IQ to really low IQ, they can learn probably more than you think they can.
Okay, we've kind of hit this from every single angle, like what it is, why it matters, how it affects others. And where I want to end the video is, well, what happens if we actually share this information with leaders? Our friend Christine Rubie-Davies has done some studies on exactly that.
She actually went in and taught educators about this, and in a random half of the schools, she trained the teachers about this. And in the others, they were just the control group, nothing.
We got much bigger gains for the kids who were with the intervention teachers. And then I did a paper with Bob Rosenthal where we looked at, well, did it make a difference if the kids were with teachers in high versus low socioeconomic, boys versus girls, one ethnicity versus others. Did it affect younger kids more than older? Whatever way we cut the data up, the intervention kids did better than if they were with control group teachers.
So to summarize, our beliefs about others certainly change how we treat them. Now we can learn to use that to our advantage. When we look at the people around us as learners and treat them accordingly, this can have a positive impact on their growth. And I think the cool thing is, like we just saw, when we teach this material to leaders, it impacts the growth of their people. To be honest, this is one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on. It was an honor getting to interview Roberth Rosenthal, Christine Rubie-Davies, Michael Merzenich, and we really went all in on the visuals with this one. So I hope you like it. We have more on the way. We'll see you next time.